Wow, that's an attractive guy.
Yeah, interesting you say that, Nick, because some people might think I was ugly. I'm just kidding. Obviously not. But in theory, someone could. Now, what is attraction? There's a lot of things that we're born with, our wealth, our family status, everything. It causes so much in our life, so many changes in our life, and drives us in so many directions. And one of the biggest probably things that you can be born with is being attractive or ugly. But why do we consider some people attractive and some people ugly? And that's what we're here to talk about today. Nick, you want to kind of lead us off and talk a little bit about the idea of attraction generally?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so when we think of attraction, think about that time that you've seen, a celebrity. It's hard to, define attractiveness without using the word itself. But like, imagine a time you've seen a very good-looking person. It could be a celebrity, it could be in a movie. You feel something towards that person, right? You feel some sort of magnetic pull, if you will. You want to be around them. You want to continue to look at them. Well, like, why does this happen? Like, we can't really explain our attraction. You can't really just say, like, Mikey's a good-looking guy. I can't really tell you why, but maybe some people just feel that way. So, right now, where my stance lies, I think there is some sort of evolution, that plays into this on why certain features of humans are attractive, to the general population, right? If we take a survey, why are certain features attractive? And most people would say, like, this is attractive, this is not. But then I think there's some level of society, of like what's kind of the norm, you know what I mean? Like, what should people look like? And that, that's gone in wrong directions with like Barbie and like beauty standards and people trying to get their waist to look like that. Like, that's just not possible. But, there's some good movements out there that, have kind of pushed away from that. But Matt, you want to talk a little bit maybe about the evolution side on what we've seen from that angle?
Yeah, sure. So in terms of like biology and like the behavioral dynamics of like a ecosystem, if you will, there's really two camps where kind of like, I guess, mating rituals come from. And they come from either like evolutionary principles or something called sexual selection. And it's the evolutionary standpoint is more about like creating as many children as possible, passing down your genetic code, and continuing that heritage. And sexual selection is similar, but it's more based on your like phenotype, your physical characteristics. So, for example, with peacocks, they are very beautiful birds. The males are, but the females, they kind of just look like turkeys. I mean, they're not very pretty. So, in terms of sexual selection, the males have their very big feathers to attract females to be able to pass on their genes and stuff like that. And you can kind of see this in today's world with men having nice fashion standards, wearing that designer brands, Gucci, all that type of stuff. So there's definitely parallels to nature. There's definitely parallels to like nature and also just like human civilization. And then there's also different types with like kind of the domineering dynamics, such as with elephant, seals, and giraffes, both fighting, two males fighting for a female, and the one that loses is the submissive one. So it kind of just watches the dominant one take care of the gene pool.
Definitely.
And you can also see this in human civilization with, I guess you could say, like UFC or boxing. It's a very powerful and physical sport, and the guys who win, they get to go out and party. So you can kind of put that evolutionary like principle on that, even though there's definitely underlining more complexity in terms of like sociology and that type of stuff. So that's just a little preview.
Right. Yeah, like also kind of going on the evolutionary thing, there's certain adaptations that species acquire over time to try to make them, to, help them live and survive. But also there's some adaptations that were acquired to kind of like, like we saw in general surveys, sometimes men find women with like bigger hips more attractive, right? Or like men that are stronger, like bigger, wider shoulders, maybe bigger physique, are found more attractive. And the thing is, it's like as we are mammals, so we're trying to find like a good partner, right? Someone that can sustain our society along, but in the best way possible. And so that's why you have people finding those things attractive, because women with wider hips could bear more children, but also men that are strong will be, keep the family safe, be able to fend for the family. I know it's kind of weird to look through that lens right now, because, it's like a whole issue. But if you break it down to like the kind of biological standpoint, I think that's where some of it actually resides. So.
Yeah, I was going to ask actually about that. So obviously, like 100 years ago or 200 years ago, and I'm not sure, by the way, just as a side, I'm not really sure about the whole like male peacocking thing. Anyway, but obviously a while ago it used to be that you needed sort of strong, fit, like being able to have good eyesight, be tall, whatever it may be, to be able to take care of your family as a male. But obviously nowadays, the best way to take care of your family is to be super intelligent or very successful in business, or somehow find a way to financially support your family. Is that something that has happened too quickly for there to be an evolutionary disposition for it? Or does the evolutionary disposition for, I guess, like familial welfare just extend to any form of success? And that's why women will be attracted to people who are rich? Or is that more of like a societal thing? And I mean, anyone who wants to feel that.
Well, I'll say my viewpoint, and Nick can tag in if he wants. But I definitely do think it's more like socio economic or sociological in the terms of like with evolutionary stuff. Like it happens in like hundreds, thousands of years for something to like change, to get an adaptation. So I think this is definitely more on the grounds of like memes, which is it's a gene, but it's in the social context of a civilization. So like me talking to somebody, I'm passing on memes as in my behavior, or like vice versa. But I definitely think it's in that camp of memetics rather than genetic stuff.
Mm-hmm. I think it's also like, as a society, we have norms, you know what I mean? Like you face forward in an elevator, you hold the door for somebody, but like, that's also a thing where there's a thing, if you see someone that's more successful than you, right? They have more money, or they have more accomplishments, they might be more intelligent than you, as in they've, maybe written a book on a subject that you find interesting. Like these are all things that are kind of glorified and respected, at least by the majority of people, I would say. And so it's kind of like when people are doing things that you can't, that almost can be found attractive, right? When there's people that are obviously just above, what we see as like the average human, you know what I mean? So that, I think that's kind of like, there's some pressure there to try to achieve that, but also people, if you can, mate with that person, it might be, better suited, especially now, like Charles said, like times have changed. So it's not like who can farm the fields and provide crop for the family. It's more who can, acquire a large amount of wealth, which then can be used for obviously general survival, but also having and living, quote unquote, the best life you can by enjoying yourself, but also maybe like supporting others. So that's what I would say.
You know what, Nick? It's actually super interesting that you brought up average, because a lot of times I think, and this is something that I recently learned and I found fascinating, a lot of times people think that attractiveness is, by definition, associated with the very best, the peak, like the people who are abnormal. But I actually recently found out that a lot of what we find attractive is just looking what is by definition average of people. So we don't want people whose eyes are too far apart or too narrow, noses too big or too small, ears, the same. Is that true that a lot of attractiveness in terms of physical features is actually related to being the average, or like of what a society expects, of the span of society or of the spectrum that you could possibly lie on in terms of facial features?
Well, so actually just recently last semester that I talked about this in my psychology class, is that when it comes down to attractiveness and kind of the psychology behind that, symmetry is the most attractive thing over any other type of feature, especially on the facial side. And so if you take, there's actually been a study done that you take, two faces, one that's more symmetrical than the other, and you have a person vote on that. And so he actually, at the end, our professor showed us this face that was the aggregate of all the most symmetrical faces, and it actually pulled everything towards the like almost perfect. And that was the most attractive face compared to everything else. And so like, I guess like going to your point is I guess the average, I wouldn't say is the most symmetrical, because it's hard to determine like what an average face is. It'd probably be something, in between. But like on that side, like symmetry and kind of like people who come out and appearing like what we've pushed it to that level is like kind of, that's like where I think, the most attractive people lie. But
that's interesting. So basically,
do you have your own thoughts on that?
Well, I mean, I'm mostly just trying to pull out all these ideas on how to be attractive for the single guys out there. I'm hearing you want to look average, but be exceptional.
I like that. Should be a quote.
I think I just made it a quote.
It'll be our slogan.
Let me take it 180. I'm gonna throw it back at you two. The nice guys finish last, not sexually.
I don't know. This is a opinionated thing, but it can kind of, I don't know. Like there's people who really value like people that are quote unquote nice or genuine, but there's some level. Obviously, I'm no expert, but there's some level of attractiveness to, I guess, people that are dominant. That don't kind of flake, I guess you could say. I don't know.
Well, like I feel like if you look at it like just purely like evolution, sexual selection, like if you would apply nice guys finish last to like say an elephant seal or a moose in terms of getting a mate, I would definitely say that statement's true, since you have to be a dominant male and actually like assert your power and your physicality rather than just letting everyone like go in front of you. I think that maybe this isn't true, but I think that like sentence, the nice guys finish last, I think that only doesn't apply to humans, just because like we are able to actually like our interactions with each other are so much more complex that like the aggregate is so much larger, to where that on average I feel like doesn't apply, since there's definitely instances where that doesn't happen and stuff, if that makes sense.
Yeah, I think if you would have asked that question near like an earlier time period in like the human development, that actually might be true. But I'd say now it can kind of vary, and it's very contextual. You know what I mean? Like there's a lot of instances where being dominant actually isn't the best thing. Can't name any off the top of my head, but I know they exist. So
yeah, definitely. I think it's like you want to be a nice guy in the terms of congenial and likable, but at the same time, like we've been talking about, it all comes back to demonstrating your worth. So you need to be able to demonstrate your worth, whether that be, look, I can provide for you because I'm so like not caring, or it be, look, I can provide for you because I'm an elite MMA fighter and I don't care about that many people, but I will care about you. Like, you know what I mean? Like, I think it's just about it all comes down to that root biological cause, whether we really realize it or not, of trying to help the species or help our own genes advance in the most like safe way possible.
Yeah, I mean, you can always bring it back to that. But I was curious on what you guys think about maybe the idea of having, how humans, we have one mate versus many. I know different species have different takes on this, but I know if you think about it, at least I'll just kind of say what I think first, and then I'd love to hear what you guys have to say. But if you think about it, like having many, like if you have one deer, reproduce with 20, like that's just going to just, amplify the species. And so, but it's kind of looked down upon. If you think about it, from a society standpoint, it's kind of looked down upon when people have multiple mates. At least that's from what I've seen. Obviously it depends on the culture, but I'd be curious on like why you think humans have kind of turned to that direction where, having one mate versus many is actually kind of the preferred thing. But
I guess I'll go. But that it's definitely an interesting topic that you brought up, Nick. It's funny because like in ancient times, I mean, humans, they lived in a large cohort of maybe like 20, 30 people, and like they're all like one large family. Not that they were all, I guess they're all related, but they all would have sex with each other. It'd be like one just big like super organism, if you will, rather than like one male only being with one female and just that going on. But there definitely was a transition during the like agricultural like birth and like with like religion, all that type of stuff. And definitely in the West now, monogamy is like a very substantially seen practice. I mean, there's definitely like different cultures, and like since human civilizations have gone global, there's like different types of practices and different types of ideas. But definitely in the U.S., I mean, my parents are like they've been married and stuff, and I definitely do think it's an uncomfortable topic whenever you say, "Oh yeah, I'm in a polyamorous relationship," or like just like that type of stuff. It's definitely an uncomfortable topic, which is weird because like we used to have that polyamorous relationships used to be a very common thing back then. So like what happened?
Yeah, one thing that I think is that so if you think about it, let's say you said, okay, you get 10 people and you want to advance the species as much as you physically can, and everyone else dies. You probably want like one or two guys, and then the rest girls, women, men, women, because it takes 9 months to have a child, and then once you've had the child, you're going to need a little bit more time than that before you can really prepare to have another child. But that's how much time it takes for the woman. For the man, how long does it take to have a child?
Rapid.
I mean, for you, it might be rapid. Yeah, for me, it might take a few hours, but whatever, like it doesn't take as long. So like it doesn't make sense for if you're just trying to have as many kids as possible, if you have unlimited food and supplies and it's just about really banging out children, no pun intended, then you're going to want a lot more women to man ratio. And then also, why does it now flipped and we go to this monogamous relationship? Well, probably because it used to be that women died in childbirth quite frequently. So it wasn't like, oh, I have one wife and we have like 4 kids together. It was like, oh, I have like 8 wives and hopefully 5 of them survive or whatever it may be. And I provide for them, whatever. And then the men would die in whatever now and die in like war, fighting with animals, whatever it may be. Now you get it. So you're going to have a wife and you take care of each other. You're not really worried about procreating for the like safety of the species. You're just procreating for for the survival of your own genetic code. So you find someone you really like, not just anyone who's of birthing age. And there's a lot more to relationships than just the mere fact of we're trying to have kids. So I think it's almost weird how it flipped, but I bet there's a lot of reasons related to childbirth, mortality rates for pregnant women.
Yeah, I think it's kind of going off of that. It's just one thing that comes to mind is just the better healthcare system we're under, and how you don't need to have 4 wives to bear the amount of children you would want. Now it's it's very, I wouldn't say it's rare, but it's obviously a lot less likely that a child or the woman would die during childbirth. And I think so now it's more switched to, which I'm personally confused about, but I think it's interesting to see that people think that it's more intimate and more love. It's like it's a stronger love and stronger relationship when it's just one person versus many. But if you think about it, if you just take a step back and kind of push, your beliefs and your feelings and whatever pressure you felt, and just think about it, like, is that really true? Do you guys think that only having one partner versus many actually means that it's a stronger connection? Or do you say it's very possible to love many people? Because obviously this is a big question. And so if we're going to go back to like, what is love? Like the Greeks laid it out for us. There was like 4 types of love. There's like, there's the love that you have, where there's romantic and sexual love, but there's also love that you give to family and friends, philia, but there's like mania, which is like obsessive love. That's something when you can't get enough of something, and so you have to like chase it. So there's many different levels, but I was curious, what do you on that topic, what are you guys thinking on the topic of like love and connection with one versus many?
I mean, I feel like what's happened is that it used to be that the types of love were kind of separated, and like you'd love some people some way, some people another way. But now I feel like in our culture, it's almost that, okay, your wife should be someone that you love, you lust for. I don't know the Greek, but like you lust for them, so you're sexually attracted to them, but you're also mentally attracted to them, as in you, like if they were your same gender, you weren't sexually attracted, you'd still be great friends. So it's almost like they try to build all of these different things into one person. And that's why it's more like, oh, it's a tighter connection, it's a greater love, and it's more like acceptable, and it's what people expect now. Whereas it used to be like, no, like you can just be attracted to that person. You don't have to be friends with them, and you don't have to really like enjoy their company. And I think that's maybe why like we've seen this move towards monogamy as the norm, at least in our culture.
Do you think it's like, you think it like it works though? Because like, so if you think about it this way, we're emotional creatures, we're social. So if you're able to have a deep relationship with more people to kind of regulate your nervous system, so like for example, like you have 2 close, I guess, wives rather than one, that's an extra person to like thoroughly regulate your nervous system, and then like that other person has 2 other people as well. So like I'm wondering if like back then there was a more stability of like emotional strength rather than today, because I mean we do have a lot of issues with like emotional illnesses such as like anxiety, depression, all that type of stuff. I mean, there's definitely other like factors with that, but there could be like something there. But also with divorce rates, for example. I mean, I think monogamy is something that's so like profoundly pushed on people that they get in these relationships and they actually they find something that they didn't realize. So like, I mean, divorce rates are increasing and all this other type of stuff. So I mean, it's definitely interesting because I think monogamy is good. I personally think that, but there's definitely some red flags, if you will, with how it's linked with our system for civilization.
Yeah, I think it's also cool to look at many different cultures, and also like you mentioned a while ago, like religion and stuff, how we've actually added so many layers to this question. It's not you can't attack it from like one side. Like if we're just looking at, because like, okay, like what we've grown up in is like the Western side, right? You could say the United States is predominantly like Christian, right? So we kind of grew up under that. But if you look at other places of the world, like we're all like humans, right? We're the same species, but further east, you got big families. You have Mormons, which want to have many different wives, but and I know that sometimes in the Middle East they have many different wives, many different families, kids that are unrelated, but they're all together. So I don't know. It's kind of interesting to see. It's kind of, I don't know. It's just kind of an interesting way to look at it. But
I mean, just from a mathematical perspective, I'm not really sure how, if we were to say each guy has 3 families, how it would even work out, because then only 1/3 of guys would even be able to have a single wife because there wouldn't be enough women to go around. So I think part of it is too is just a logistical issue where it's like, all right, guys, we're going to have to limit to 1 each because we don't have enough to go around anymore because now people aren't dying as much.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and that's why you would say like the Earth is actually on population basis is pretty split. It's pretty close to 50-50. Obviously, it's a little off. I think it's a 51-49. But like you said, Chalice, if we did have everyone going under a separate rule, we wouldn't have enough to go around. But
I mean, also, and I'm sure I need to say this just because I know we're going to have thousands of people rushing to the comment section to mention it, but there are certain animals that obviously don't have religion and culture, like swans, no offense, that do mate for life. They do live monogamous relationships. So it is entirely possible that is normal for us. That certain animals do that, and there's some advantages to that. So I wouldn't rule out that possibility.
Mm-hmm.
What I find kind of funny, penguins, they have monogamous relationships, but they also there are situations where a male penguin or a female penguin aren't completely loyal, as in that they have sex with another male or female. And it's kind of funny because like they use a very similar like system to prostitution, or like in that way, as in the male gives a nice pretty stone to the female for her nest, and then they can like have sex. But I don't know, I just thought that was cool.
I actually didn't know that.
World's oldest religion or profession, prostitution is what they always say. And I mean, like we've been talking about sex and religion and attractiveness. It does, like, as much as some people might not like to admit it, it plays a huge role in pretty much everything in the world. If you look at world leaders, most world leaders aren't ugly. Most world leaders are, at least most American presidents, are over 6 foot tall. Like, statistically, there's a lot of stuff, if you look at it, that it really helps to meet certain genetic requirements. And it sucks to say, but if you don't hit a certain threshold at birth or through plastic surgery, then it's impossible for you to hold certain jobs. So it's, it's an interesting thing to examine because it actually does play such a huge role in our lives.
Yeah, I remember just learning this actually, I think last semester, is that we're talking about leadership styles and also leadership as a whole. And like people who, like you said, who are 6 feet or above actually were seen as better leaders. There could be no difference between the 5'5" guy and the 6 foot guy, but the guy who stands taller seems like a better leader, but technically the platforms might not even be different, or maybe even the shorter guy is actually a better leader. Like he has made better decisions, so it's kind of interesting to kind of see how, being attracted to someone also makes you maybe trust them more. Like, having a guy that has a symmetrical face, and is 6 feet tall, you might trust him more, but there's no basis to go off of. So it's just kind of interesting to see, like us as humans, we just instantly gravitate to that. So
yeah, as much as we might like to admit it, a lot of what we think of as logical is, I mean, we try to pretend we're logical, but I think a lot of what we do is just very animalistic. Like we're a lot more driven by our biological needs than we might like to admit. And it's because it's scary to admit, like, oh, no matter how much my brain is overruling my body, I'm still going to find this guy more trustworthy or this woman more likable, no matter what they say or no matter what the reality of it is, just because of how they look.
Mm-hmm.
And messed up if you think about it.
Yeah, I think that's why, like, when they say first impressions like matter the most, it's actually very true, because if the person instantly trusts you and believes are going to lead them down the right path, that just changes your whole interaction, right? It also can make you more attractive, right? If you make a good first impression for some reason, there's that chemistry in your brain, right? I know Matt likes to talk about this, but there's those chemicals that fire in your brain that instantly kind of make you gravitate towards that person. So I don't know. I like to talk about leadership. It's a big thing. Yeah. I don't know. Do we have any other topics we want to discuss? Or anyone have any else on this?
One cool fact I found interesting was in how we're talking about in today's society, attractiveness is more towards like social interactions and not really biological. It's biological on the like the bedrock of it, but it's more interaction based. But so before, women were gravitated towards rich, successful men, as in if you have more money, more power, more stability, more protection, etc. But in recent years now, through research and surveys, men have now actually been seen to be more attracted to successful women rather than, say, a woman with like more bearing hips, younger, the more like physicality type of stuff we were talking about before. So like it's interesting how as years go on, we're more gravitating towards like these sociological characteristics rather than like just the more fundamental like physical attributes and stuff like that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I don't know, this kind of goes, what comes to mind for me is going off of like gender roles, right? How we've had some like the stigma of, the man does this, the woman does this, but now, I think we're, as a society, we're going in the right direction. We're trying to be more, focused on equality and openness and acceptance, which I think is in the right direction. Obviously, I don't think we're there yet, but I think we're realizing that having like, what it was back in the old days, you just had the man out and working, right? The man was, and the woman would stay home, but that worked to a certain degree. But now you can have almost double the income, right? Double the intellect, double the success, if you think about it from that way. And that's honestly just going to push your genes, your family, and you as a person beyond what you could have had just from, what we see as like the old standard. So I think that's kind of why that's almost seen as more attractive, and what's what we've been pushing towards is, you can have a mate that's actually, that's going to help successfully push the family. And sometimes you even see men like staying home, right? Sometimes it flips, and it's really just what's best for, your connection, what's best for your life. So I think it's very good. And I think it's moving in the right direction. And I think that's maybe my take on why that's happening. But Chalice,
I mean,
looking forward.
there's been a lot of changes just to relationships in general over the past few hundred years. We haven't really made much mention of it up until this point, I think just for the sake of simplicity, but obviously we've been talking mainly in terms of heterosexual relationships, but there's been a significant advent of homosexual relationships, and the acceptance of that has increased, and the percentage of people who are homosexual has increased massively. And it basically takes everything we said up to this point and just throws it away, because we were talking about, it's about preserving your gene pool, advancing the species. None of that relates to homosexual relationships, and yet they still work perfectly well. I think they might actually have lower divorce rates than heterosexual relationships. I'm not 100% sure, but I believe I read that. It's like it almost disproves everything we said to a degree. And I think that does show that there's a certain level of maybe not biological evolution, but sociological evolution that can happen in such a short time frame that the entire nature of relationships has kind of been changed just by existing and evolving human civilization, we've gotten to see these huge shifts already. And I think in the next 100 years, we're probably going to see incredible shifts in how we even conceive of relationships. So it's such an interesting topic to really be looking at now, and to hopefully be able to continue to observe and advance, because I'm so for all, everyone finding whatever they enjoy in life and pursuing it as long as it's consensual.
Yeah, I think what you said was actually pretty eye-opening to me right now, Chalice. You can't really see my eyes open, but what I was saying is how we've seen a huge change in just the past maybe like 20 years on how we accept and perceive relationships, and like what we've accepted. And I think it's actually moving almost too fast for some people to grasp. We joke about like the boomers, but it's actually true. Like if you kind of grew up back then and that's what you have known for your entire life, they're going to be very, it's actually true. Like some people in that generation, like majority, actually fear change. It's like there was a survey on this, like, and actually us, like our generation is more, accepting the change. And the generation younger than us, like I think Gen Zers, unless we're Gen Z, can't really remember, they're actually the most like up the change. And so you can see kind of this upward slope, if you will, right? Like if you look at a graph, like accepting the change years, you got the younger people more accepting. And so as we get older, I think you're going to see this kind of this increasing, little E curve. You're going to see this exponential curve of acceptance and willingness to accept change, right? And so I think it might be moving too fast for us now, but I firmly believe that us as a humanity, as a society, are going to be able to catch up. So there's going to be some intersection point. I don't know when it was. If I did know when it was, I'd be running for president, but I think right now we're on the right path. Matt?
I agree with you, Nick. And going back to Mikey's take on just the, I guess, like the bizarreness of like homosexual dynamics in regards to like evolutionary principles. So like with just passing on your gene pool, like your genes and reproduction, all that type of stuff. It just completely like just tears it apart. And what I find very interesting is that homosexual relationships is even found in other species of animals. It's not just localized to humans. So then that brings up the question of where does this arise from? Where does it emerge? Since that it isn't just social, it's just not social. It's definitely genetic or evolutionary. So definitely something to think about.
Mm-hmm. Kind of dicking around right now.
Yeah, I mean, this is such a funny topic sometimes, and obviously it's like easy to make a lot of jokes about it, but it is obviously, I think we're genuinely all really interested in it, and I think we'd be really like fascinated, I think, to hear all of our, like, any of our viewers' takes. We usually try to sort through all of the tweets and texts and emails and we get about the stuff. So if anyone
if you ever replied, like, don't get anxious. Like, we're coming.
We haven't been doing a great job, actually. I run the Twitter account, and I just, as a little bit of an administrative note, I have not done a good job at all of replying. It's not funny. I shouldn't be laughing. Have not done a really good job replying. So if you want to tweet out, I'll try to get around to it. Summer school's just starting up, so it'll be tough, but it's MVC Podcasts on Twitter. I'll try. If you have any topic suggestions, possibly we might be doing a retweet for a guest host position for one episode. There's a lot of possibilities in the works, and I think, if you guys have any other administrative notes, it'd be great to hear from you, obviously, if we can hopefully get back to it at some point.
Mm-hmm. I'm just saying, stay tuned, guys. We took a little break with the uploads, but they're gonna start flowing in like the Niagara after a nice spring afternoon. So I think that's, if I can do my part, I'll close this out here. And so, thank you from all of us here at MVC Podcasts. Thanks for tuning in. We hope you guys enjoy this episode. Now to the next one.
Sweet. That was good.
Damn.
Dude,
That was
they just keep getting better.
dude, that episode on terms of like information, like informational, not our best. But in terms of like listenability
And humor.
too. Because I don't know if you noticed, but actually every time you switched to me, I was doing something different with my hat.
Yeah, I actually like that. That was good.
Because I thought like whenever you said peacocking, I was gonna make a joke. I didn't get a chance to jump in early enough because like I think Nick said something or like you like changed like topics while you're talking about it.
Mm-hmm.
I was gonna be like, I was gonna do this and be like, yeah, like some guys do like the peacock,